Reggie, as we've talked about, these letters were written by Paul while he was in prison. Which comes to mind for me is did that have any consequence to his respectability, being that he was a man in prison?
Well, Jews have a long history of the glory of martyrdom. And you know, one of the great things about the Jewish worldview is because it starts with creation and then a fall. And there is the sense of it's not necessarily the case that those who are high and exalted ought to be high and exalted, and it's not necessarily the case that those who are down in the dirt really deserve to be there. But the Jewish theology had always been about what's God going to do to reverse the evil that is here. And martyrs, the Old Testament is full of people who die in order to tell the story of who God really is, and especially in the intertestamental period when the Greeks and the Romans come in and take over. And then even Greek and Roman theology, or Greek and Roman thinking, is aware of the noble teacher who is wrongly accused, put in prison, or even executed. You know, Socrates was forced to drink the hemlock. Seneca, who was Nero's teacher, winds up in a conspiracy to try to kill Nero when Nero goes bad, and he's forced to commit suicide. And well, Socrates only gains esteem from having to drink the hemlock. Seneca, his voice is only amplified by virtue of his having to commit suicide. Musonius Rufus, who was Epictetus's teacher, he is forced into exile. Dio Chrysostom, who is a young contemporary of Paul, he's forced into exile, and during his travels, it's almost like he's more famous for being sent into exile, and that sort of gives him an authority, you know, a man of, if you will, a Greek and Roman man of sorrows. So the fact that Paul writes from prison does not necessarily take away from his authority to speak, and you get that sense in Paul himself. I'm in prison, but is the gospel in prison? No. In Philippians, he just talks about, you know, people out there are preaching the gospel because they think they're going to make it worse on me. Let them go, because the gospel's going out. That's all I care about. And especially knowing that in Jesus Christ, Satan's best shot, trying to take out the second person of the Trinity, winds up being the very means for the redemption of the human race. You know that Paul would have this sensibility that all this stuff it's only enhancing my power and the power of the power especially of my gospel.